Hi, and welcome to the Martial Arts Business Dojo interviews. And today I have with me Mo Teague. So Mo is a bit of a legend and has been around for a very, very long time. I've been aware of this guy for many, many years, but I think this is the first time we've actually got to have a conversation. So firstly, thanks for coming on.
No, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you. And could you, for those guys that may not know exactly what it is you do, could you give us a brief overview?
Well, I can give you an overview of what I've done to bring me up to, just to bring everybody up to date. And it's funny enough, I knew you were going to ask that question because I've looked at some of your other interviews, which I've enjoyed. And so I've written some stuff down and surprised myself, actually, to be fair. Sorry, I've got to put my bins on.
Okay, yeah.
I started, I'm thinking about, I started training about 1970, 71. And that was in judo and Shotokan karate. So I'll put some names out there. Most people might not recognize them, but my first grading was with Inoida, Kawazoa and Tomita. These were, I mean, this was back in the day. We're going back to the early 70s now. I joined the military, was in the military for a long time, didn't do a lot of martial arts training on a formal level, did lots of stuff informally, boxing and etc. Towards the end of my military career, I was quite fortunate to be posted to London, and I trained with people like Victor Khan in Wing Chun, Austin Go, and people like that. I really got into my training when I left the army, and I got instructor qualifications under Richard Pastillo, Rick Fay, Eric Paulson, Jack Ottman, with the British Combat Association with Peter Considine and Jeff Thompson, Sambo with the Federation of Russian Martial Arts under Vadim Kolganov. I was in the Guardian Angels. I don't know if people are aware of them, in London. I worked close protection, and I was doing a lot of bouncing, did bouncing for about 10 years, most of it on my own in a biker bar, and we're talking about pre-SIA days. It was a bit of a Wild West. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Alex de Souza. Worked out in the Middle East as a consultant, security consultant, and that's kind of an overview of where we are today. I run a gym. That's it.
Well, that's a very rich list of some pretty heavy duty names there, and yeah, I'd like to sort of unpick a little bit of that as we go along there. But yeah, just off that itself, I mean, that's a huge amount of knowledge that you've been you've been party to. But so one of the other things I know I heard about you recently was that I can't remember who it was, but somebody was holding a seminar a while ago, and you were going there as a participant, and I thought that was quite interesting because obviously you're very well known for what you do. You've been around forever. You have an awful lot of knowledge, and it's unusual for somebody so far up the tree to actually go to other people's seminars as a participant. And that's one of the things I think is fantastic, is the fact that you seem happy to do that.
Yeah, I think I think we're talking about probably the IKF guys, Matt, Bill Gilmore and Amit Himmelstein with the Kapap. Went there, quite happy to do that. I'm quite happy to be a beginner. Yeah, so I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Everybody's got something to show. It's quite refreshing to be a beginner, sometimes, and it was good. It challenged me in many ways, and I came back. In fact, I signed up to go to Israel. Obviously, with the way things are, we missed that, but I'm looking forward to joining those guys out in Israel when this is all sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowledgeable bunch. I mean, they really do have some interesting takes on things. So, I mean, that's really interesting. The fact that you're still able to do that and see that in yourself, which a lot of people could probably benefit from having the same kind of thought processes on that, because we are definitely all learning as we go. Now, if we go backwards and we look at what sort of started you out in martial arts in the first place, can you remember what started you on the journey?
Probably like most people, being bullied at school. And then it was the Enter the Dragon thing afterwards. I think I was into karate, and only because of the fact that I lived near a naval establishment, Royal Navy, and they had a karate club going, and my friend went, so I went with him. And this was probably before I'd heard of Bruce Lee. So we're going back a few years even before Enter the Dragon came out. But once that came out, you know, we jumped on that bandwagon. I can remember going to my first karate class post Enter the Dragon. There was 200 people at the class, and then about a year later there was 6 of us. So we went from 200. You know, obviously the shine rubbed off. So. But yeah, I remember it was that normal Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, bullying thing.
Yeah. Well, you've had quite an eclectic journey from what you from some of the things that you mentioned there. There's an awful. You didn't stay in one particular field, shall we say, and that in itself is quite interesting. So, what made you explore the different styles and types?
I think it was just as the knowledge became available. I think because a lot of it is obviously having access to you know, what you've got access to, and then with the magazines, and there was just an explosion. I think about in the early 90s there was the 2 things that happened almost simultaneously, which was Jeff Thompson came out. I think it was either the Pavement Arena, I think it was, and that was the questioning the validity of traditional martial arts in a reality context. And also the UFC, which was obviously answering the question that people have been asking for years, which was the best martial art and who would beat who. So I kind of got in right at the very beginning of that, and that was, you know, really that really opened the floodgates and opened everybody's minds, and that's really kind of how it developed in that respect. But living in London as well, I lived in London, so I had access to some really good people too. So.
Yeah, you mentioned being part of the British Combat Association, and when that first formed with Peter and Jeff, there was a huge amount of knowledge coming in with instructors, and the resource and the pool of those instructors was absolutely top notch. And the people that you were involved with and part of, I hasten to add, you know, that was a very rich vein at the time. And you're right in the sense that when Jeff first came onto the scene with Watch My Back and what have you, he did absolutely shake up the industry massively, and created a hunger, if you will, for a more reality style bent, if you like, because that's what you became sort of most known for. And there's you did a series of DVDs, which I still own actually, the functional JKD stuff, things like that.
That's right.
Yeah, and so so you were quite an early adopter of that kind of technology and making those kind of things. And so how did you find that particular flavor, if you will?
I've always struggled with that, with the kind of the public. Even now, I kind of struggle with that public. I'm quite a private person, I think, and obviously when you put yourself out there, you're always gonna. I don't struggle with detractors or keyboard warriors or anything like that. It doesn't bother me, but as soon as you put anything out there, I've always been quite a private person. Struggled with that. Even now, you know, like we talked about social media and things like that. I'm not great with it, to be fair. It's a personality thing. But with the DVDs, I remember every man and his dog were making DVDs back in the day. I was very lucky. Jamie Clubb's a good friend of mine, who I know you've had on here.
Yes.
And yeah, he kind of guided me in many respects in that way. Yeah, I think it was Jamie actually was to blame for that.
Yeah. So but then you say that you're not particularly sort of that way orientated and stuff, but obviously one of the things that you're very famous for is chinning the wonderful Danny Dyer, and so you ended up in that series where they did the Britain's Hardest Men. And so how did that come about?
Again, you know what? I think that was Jamie. I do think that was Jamie. And I spelled Danny Dyer D-I-R-E. You know, he's a nice guy. People forget he's an actor. The only thing I'll say on that is that we filmed over about 6 weeks. And what I would say is it tells a story. It doesn't tell the story. for example, they kind of knew when they set out what the story was. But I think the actual program was about 37 minutes, and I think they took over 70 hours of film.
Yeah.
So they didn't actually show me teaching children's classes. They didn't show me teaching children with special needs, because that would have kind of gone counter then to what they were trying to portray.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have any say in the final edit. And they I did have a private screening to show what would be shown, and it was totally different to what was on TV.
Right.
So I wasn't totally happy with what's said, but I think a lot of people have kind of judged me on that unfairly, and then see that the programs like that are made for a certain genre of people.
Yeah.
And so people that watch programs like that, then it's a shallow program, but fair play. He was a nice guy. We had fun doing it. It's not a very good portrayal of what I'm actually about, but
yeah, well, it's obviously they have an agenda, and as all TV shows do, but that's obvious. The flavor of that particular series was very much set to an agenda, so appreciate that, and also the fact that a small half-hour show isn't going to show all of you. That's for sure, isn't it? So if we look at some of the other things that you're sort of renowned for, one of those being the Guardian Angels that you mentioned earlier. Now, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that don't really know what that is anymore, because that was a little bit of time ago. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the Guardian Angels started out in New York. Crikey, must have been back maybe in the 80s. And basically they were, you can imagine New York back in the late 70s and early 80s. It was quite a violent place. And I think people wanted to take ownership of their own neighborhoods or their own city. And so they now clarify, they're not vigilantes. Vigilantes carry out justice. The Guardian Angels were not vigilantes. They were safety patrols. So, and if you've seen the film The Warriors, it was based on those kind of gang lines. We had, nicknames, and we had a uniform, and we had handshakes and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of fun. I was in the army at the time, funny enough. The training was first class. Absolutely first class. It was the first time I came into, doing things like the fence, the legal aspect, and we're going way even before Jeff came out with his stuff. I was doing reality stuff then with the Guardian Angels. So the training was really, really good. Psychological training, the physicality, it was tough. And then we were going out on patrols around London. The only two places we didn't go were Brixton, which it was ironic because that's where I lived at the time, and Chinatown. And we would do safety patrols anywhere where we could say where the crime was quite high. So we would spend a lot of time on the tube, on the underground, especially on the Northern Line, which was quite crime-ridden at the time. So we were going out and knew it wasn't a question of if we were going to have any conflict. It was just a question of we were going to have trouble, and we would get right in the middle of it. And and we were very successful. It was very good, very well publicly received. And I think the only reason it kind of stopped was the fact that I think they were a registered charity. And I think the law changed. We would do like public collections money to collect money to keep going. And I think the law changed on that, which we couldn't do anymore. So I think, it would basically come down to funding. I think they're still going, but on a very, very small scale now, nominal scale. But yeah, it was basically safety patrols around London.
Yeah, interesting, because when you say that it wasn't a vigilante sort of setup, which is how some people perceived it, but then you said that it wasn't a case of if there was going to be trouble, but when.
Yes.
That you could then follow that to its conclusion and say, well, actually, that's quite a hard sort of position, because if you're going to the places where there's going to be problems, then that instantly means that there is going to be some kind of vigilante element towards that, or you could argue that point.
Well, no, vigilantes administer justice. We didn't. We would carry out maybe a citizen's arrest, and then the police would be called.
Right.
So we wouldn't actually administer any punishment or anything like that. We would just arrest people, carry out a citizen's arrest. We were well received by everybody. The policemen on the beat loved us because many of the times we were coming to their assistance. All the London football supporters and hooligans liked us. We had total respect, never had any trouble from them. We had a lot of respect. We were very solid at the time and very well recognised and received.
Yeah, no, totally. It's one of those where if we were all a little bit more community minded, then the world would be a better place. There's absolutely no quarrels on that particular point, because I totally agree with you.
The motto was "Dare to Care."
Okay, right, yeah.
That was the motto of the Guardian Angels, and I think it's a big thing. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to care about your community, and so words are one thing, but actions are another. So. Look, there were no meatheads or anybody like that, really. They were, some of them were like 17, 18-year-old young girls. But, they really knew what they were about. I've got to say, and like I say, I was serving in the army at the time, so, I'm not a mug when it comes to things like that, but fair play, these girls and young lads, they were getting stuck in, and we never came off second best, because of the training. The training was great.
Yeah. Well, as a proving ground, that would have been a very rich one, I would imagine, with the fact that you'd be sort of exposed to human nature in the raw, shall we say. Very much the same with working on the doors and security, that kind of thing. Because again, I did a lot of that for years, and it gives you an insight, shall we say, into application that you wouldn't normally find if you just were training in a sports centre or something. So. Totally get that. Now, moving on from that, now you said you're living in London, and obviously you then moved down to Weymouth, where you set up a gym.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a jump from London to Weymouth. What happened there?
It's just where I left from. So I left to join the military from Weymouth. Left the military, came back to Weymouth.
Right. Okay. All right. So yeah. So he's going home. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. Okay, well, Weymouth is a lovely place for those that don't know. It's a lovely part of the world, but was that? Did you find that not exciting enough? Coming out of the military, the Guardian Angels, all that sort of thing. That's a high adrenaline lifestyle. How did you compensate for that?
Well, I went on the doors, and I think people say Weymouth, same as any seaside town. People, especially in the summertime, people come on holiday to get drunk. They have anonymity. So, we're getting people from Manchester and Liverpool and London. They're coming down here. They're having a good time. That means they're going to take copious amounts of alcohol. We know what that does. Drugs and laddish behaviour, i.e. fighting, violence, trouble, that sort of thing. So working the doors was interesting. We had a naval base here at the time. And we've got an army camp here. And I worked in a biker bar at the time, so that was kind of enough adrenaline. I was still doing close protection training. I had my own company for a time, close protection training company. Worked out in the Middle East. Still, I would work the doors. I would still be doing seminars, training, running a gym. I'm having a ball right now with this lockdown thing, because I haven't stopped in ever. I've never, I've never really had a holiday, I've got to say, properly. So I shouldn't really say it. I know people are suffering and things like that, and we weren't going to talk about it, but just to say, I'm not complaining about being locked down right now at all, given the fact that I've never stopped.
There's an opportunity for a reset there for sure. Yes, sure. That was actually going to be one of my sort of questions. Was what are you doing sort of currently? Because there's you were hugely exposed for a large number of years in all the magazines and on the seminar circuits and stuff. And then maybe it was my perception, I'm not sure, but you did seem to go a little bit quiet for the past few years. And so what are you up to these days?
Well, the reason I went quiet was the fact that I became disillusioned with doing seminars, because I thought I was turning up for seminars, I was teaching good information, to people that just weren't getting it and weren't going to utilize it. You know, I just became, I was looking at people and I was seeing like people don't change their mind. They just change their, you know, you're not going to change anybody's mind when you go somewhere. You know, they've always got their, trying to think of the word, but you know, the way that they think, you're not going to change that. You know, so if they're doing a different style or something like that, well, yeah, but we'd do this, I'd do that. Well, what's the point of me being here? And then the people that did get it, you just know they're not going to train it, they're not going to rep it, they don't have the work ethic. And I just thought, you know what, I'm worth more than this. It doesn't matter, you know, what you're paying me or whatever. Like, I'm not going to flog a dead horse. I've got better things to do with my time. So I really dropped out, and it's only recently that I kind of, people said, oh, you know, can you come and do a seminar for me? And I said, well, for people that I know and trust, I'll do it. And so, you know, I've started doing that. I've started up my own group, Technical Research and Development Group. I'm actually writing, after all these years, a book, a tactical book, so Fight Tactics, which people talk about tactics in a combatives, they have no idea what it actually means. They've kind of got a rough idea about what tactics are. The only reason I survived so many violent confrontations was not for the fact that you know, I'm a good fighter or anything like that, but I understood people and I understood tactics, and tactics will always beat techniques. So too many people are, you know, I always say amateurs talk techniques and professionals talk tactics. So that's that, you know, that's my take. I'm busy right now. I'm more than happy, which is kind of, you don't grow when you're comfortable. I get that. But you know, in terms of martial arts training, if you like, you know, people say it's a journey. Well, sometimes you got to get where you're going. And I feel that I'm pretty much there.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I'm like I say, I'll still put on a white belt. I'll still go and do that. But I, you know, and I, you know, obviously I'm still growing. I'm reading. I'm researching. I've been checking out your stuff, and you know, so I'm still interested. I'm still motivated. Doing my own training. But yeah, there's just not enough hours in the day even now, and I don't know how I managed before this lockdown, because like, you know, running a gym as well. So I don't know how I was doing that, and I guess I'll have to get back to it soon, hopefully.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things when I'm talking to guys that have been around for quite a number of years and have tried different things and have cross-trained and have explored all different avenues, is the conversation of how martial arts was at the start of their journey to how martial arts is today. So you touched on that briefly when you said about the seminar stuff, but what's the main differences that you could sort of point out between the training when you started to how training is today?
Well, obviously social media has been a massive thing. I know people that are running Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, for example, that are taking their information only off YouTube.
Right, okay.
Now, you could argue for and you could argue against. I don't like it personally. I think it's an aid, it's a supplement, could be supplementary to an authentic, you know, training schedule and routine and whatever under a recognized organization or instructor, whatever. But yeah, I know people that are just going on YouTube, getting some information and opening up their own gym. That's happened to me locally. So I think social media's had a massive part in that. I think back in the day we were hungry. I used to travel all over the country. You know, I would travel from Weymouth to London. I used to go to Bob Breen's Academy for weekends up there, train with Mark McFan, Rick Young, you know, all these great, fantastic people. I remember, I think Bob had a purple belt over from America back in the early BJJ days. Purple belt, wow, you know, traveled. It was great, you know, because it was what we had access to.
Yeah.
I just don't think. I think when you give people, they haven't got to work for it nowadays. I had to go out and work for it. I had to look people up. You know, you had to go on Yellow Pages. You had to, you know, you couldn't just Google something. You had to find out this guy's coming over. Where's he going to be? You know, you didn't have Google Maps to find your way there. It was the old bits of paper with routes on it, and it was way more exciting. You know, it was an adventure, I think. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think there's that sense of adventure that we had. You know, you know, if you sent away for something, I mean, if you go on Amazon now, you get it the next day.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you wanted, like, I don't know, a pair of Bruce Lee sparring gloves or something, you know, you'd have to send out your postal order or your check, and you have to wait for that to clear, and then, you know, it'd be like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you had that excitement about stuff, you know, waiting for the next issue of Martial Arts Illustrated to come out, you know, or Combat Magazine or Fighters Arts or whatever it was, you know. It was just a totally different. I think it's all there for people. I think people don't have the work ethic nowadays that we had then. I think, you know, we live in a society of instant gratification, and I just don't think people have the work ethic.
Yeah. Well, that's an accusation that is often thrown around, and there definitely seems to be some truth within that.
It's a generalization. I'm generalizing. Obviously, there are people.
Yeah, of course. So if you could look at that and say, well, are there any positives to the modern way of doing things? Could you highlight one of those?
Yeah, social media.
Okay, yeah, blessing and a curse.
You've got I mean, it's a double-edged sword. You've got, you know, I mean, I think it's great. If it's understood and utilized properly, I think social media is great. I'm finding out stuff all the time. I'm seeing what's good and what's bad and what other people are doing, and you know, I'm quite reassured the fact that I'm doing stuff that nobody else is doing, and I know they're not doing it because I don't see it. And so, you know, in that respect, yeah, it is a double-edged sword. There's good and bad. 50-50, you know.
Yeah, I suppose, like anything, it's how you use it, isn't it? You're absolutely right. So, so if people want to reach out and contact you, if people are interested in what you're doing, and you know, especially with the book that you're talking about, things like that, I mean, I'm sure that's going to be really, really interesting to read. I'm definitely going to be buying a copy of that. How can people contact you?
I've got a Facebook, Mo Teague, or Morris Teague. I think I've got a what do you call it? An internet website. I know it's been worked on. I think that's Mo Teague. I'll have to put the details out. I'm not hard to find. I mean, I'm in Weymouth Martial Arts Centre. I'm not hard to find. You know, if people want to get hold of me, like I say, if people want to find me, they'll find me. If they put the work in, you know, it's not difficult. I know I should be spouting all Facebooks and TikToks and things, but
not if you don't want to. Not if that is. It's entirely, you know, it's entirely whatever people want to do, isn't it? So
yeah, no, exactly. You know, I say it's not really a problem, but I'm more than happy with the way things are. If people want to come and train with me, I'm not going to make it too easy for them. And that might sound like ridiculous in this day and age. I don't want more people. I want the right people. So I'm not after, you know, there's nothing I need materialistically or money wise. So I'm not that in terms of ego. I've got a nice gym. I've got wonderful students. I don't need more. You know, people that are like trying to sell something. I think sometimes if you chase after something, it runs away from you. And I've never had a problem in terms of student numbers. I don't advertise. Like I said, I don't even think I've got a website up and running. I'm more than busy. I'm more than happy. I get the right people come to me. You know, I haven't gone away, and I'm not going away. I intend to be doing this for a while, maybe not too much longer. But I've got some plans, and you know, I do run maybe a bi-monthly seminar up in Kettering, right, at Andy Gibney's place. I've got my own group. So Tactical Research and Development Group is a Facebook page. People can contact me through there. That's my group now.
Okay, yeah.
Or just put Mo Teague and you'll find me, or Weymouth Martial Arts Centre.
All right, excellent, excellent. Well, Mo, it's been a genuine pleasure talking to you, my friend. And as I say, you're somebody that I've known of for a very long time, but I think this is the first time we've actually spoken. So it's a genuine pleasure.
Let's not make it the last.
No, I sincerely hope not. I really do. So thank you very much for coming on, Mo. It's a genuine pleasure.
No, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again.
Bye-bye.
Take care.